तो हाज़रीन नाज़रीन, आज का शो थोड़ा स्पेशल है क्योंकि टुडे स्पेशल एपिसोड बाय बिकॉज आज इंटरनेशनल जा रहे हैं हम, ग्लोबल क्योंकि एक ऐसे जिसकी आवाज़ सुन रहे हैं आप, वो इंसान बैठा है हिंदुस्तान में, यूपी में टू बी स्पेसिफिक। अर्चित साहब वापस आ गए हैं मैड्रिड में। मैड्रिड कहाँ पड़ता है अर्चित? भालगांव।
स्पेन लास्ट चेक किया था मैंने, बट
स्पेन में पड़ता
कुछ
है।
पता नहीं रशिया का कहाँ तक पहुंच जाए,
कब कहाँ चले जाए। तो ये स्पेन में है और हमारे पास आज गेस्ट हैं, वो भी लंदन, बाहरगांव, तो वो भी लंदन में है। वेलकम मल्लिका। आप लंदन में हैं कि लंदन के किसी ऐसे आउटस्कर्ट्स पे हैं?
नहीं यार, सेंट्रल लंदन। हेलो एंड थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग मी।
Thank you. Because for the longest time, I recently got to know that Oxford University is not in London. It's in Oxford.
Well, the clue is in the name, Sadaf. Come
So
on.
that's why you're not there at Oxford.
Exactly. That is what I realized. That I can never be there because I don't even know where it is.
But you are in fine company. Don't worry. Even I couldn't possibly get into Oxford University, I don't think.
No,
Chalo.
I try भी नहीं
कोई
करना।
बात नहीं, कोई
That
बात
makes the three of us.
So welcome Mallika. Mallika is a food and drink industry commentator, food entrepreneur, cookbook author and communication consultant to food, drinks and destination. She also co-founded something called Sizzled Spices with SIZL. Very interesting. बचपन में ऐसी इंग्लिश में गलत इंग्लिश लिखते तो बहुत मारते मास्टर साहब, लेकिन if you are a communication expert, spelling doesn't matter. So we'll come to
100%. अरे ब्रांड में तो कुछ भी चलता है. You can do anything you like.
Exactly. So SIZL, Sizzle Spice, and now Mallika has also turned into a podcaster. So we will of course put her podcast link on our show note. You can go and listen to all her podcasts. Welcome Mallika to our this humble abode, जो भी बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में, but हाँ, welcome to that place.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction, हाँ.
Thank you.
Sizzle को तो sizzling कर दिया एकदम. Too good.
तड़का मारेंगे अभी तो खाली सिजल हुआ है, तड़का मारना बाकी है अभी। तो we also last week we did one episode, another Bengali episode. This one is for people just because her name is Mallika Basu doesn't mean we are going to do a Bengali or Bong episode. नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. We're going to go global, dude. Global. So yeah, that's where we start. How was your Puja, Mallika, in London?
It was, very sensible and low-key, Sadaf, to be honest, because I was working, the whole weekend. I was doing a food writing course for British Library.
Wow.
So, yeah, I messed up my dates. Next year, Durga Puja to January mein hi dal denge diary mein. Because it was a big mess up. The Bengali community was not happy, especially my mother.
Yeah.
Who is also not Bengali, by the way. My mother's from Delhi originally. So I'm only half Bengali. But it is a crime she will not forget easily, unfortunately. So I only went on Ashtami and did darshan, got some peace water, Shanti Jal, very important to have peace splashed on you, I find.
Correct. I think everyone, especially the half bongs, and I find them very interesting because half bongs, but during the puja, they become full bong. Full सारी वाली, बिल्कुल सारी डाल के उस टाइम पे बिल्कुल माता सभा।
And also me, I'm not even religious, but I go and stand with my hands folded. I'm very happy. I become fully Bengali, fully religious. I'm the first in the queue for bhog. I'll take anything you give me at that time of the year.
Wow. And you also put on those sari and all.
Fully.
Perfect.
So I live in central London, and central London has a lot of great Durga Pujas.
Nice.
There's 2 or 3 big. There's one in Ealing. There's one, it used to be in Camden Town Hall in King's Cross, and now it's moved. And there's a smaller, more intimate pujo called London Durga Puja in Belsize Park. But the Bengalis are at it fully, It's like you go inside and it's like you are in a smaller version of Chittaranjan Park.
Wow.
Or Maddox Square, yeah.
Have you finally colonized London?
I'm trying my best. I'm trying, slowly and steadily. We are poking our noses in all the places we shouldn't be.
Correct. अब तो क्वीन भी जा चुकी हैं, अब तो हमारा ही राज होने वाला है.
बस और क्या, यही तो हम लोग तो we're trying one piece at a time,
Correct.
When my kids were younger, I taught them to shout stolen jewels in the Tower of London. हम लोग जाते थे ना अंदर घूमने. These tiny mixed race children, because my ex-husband is he's Peruvian English.
Yeah.
So mixed as well. So the 2 little kids I have, they're quite white, quite Gora looking with light eyes and all. And they used to go, as soon as we entered the jewelry chamber where the crowns are all kept, they used to start shouting, stolen diamonds, stolen jewels.
That's very inspiring.
When are you coming? Are you coming anytime soon to India, Mallika?
I want to. So normally I go at least every other year to visit my mom. And then in between I go for, hanging with my friends or doing some food research because I have friends, in Delhi, Bombay, Goa.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 of my best friends live in Goa now.
Nice.
But, I'm struggling to take the time out because I started all this work in the food industry in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So say 17 years I was writing about food.
Yeah.
And commenting on food. But I did that alongside working in the corporate world. So I had a career in PR and communications. And I got quite senior with that.
Correct.
So, 4 din, I used to work in the corporate world. Usme jo paise milte the, usme to I used to have a relaxed life in the food industry, eating, writing, talking, not being paid very much, but it was fine. So, fir pandemic mein, I brought those things together. Now it's very hard to find the time, 2-3 weeks to take off. And, you can't do India in less than 2 weeks. What is the point? By the time I go to all my mashi, pishi, kaka, mama, chacha, then it's already done. Half the holiday is done.
No, so the reason of asking that because जगजीत सिंह द लेजेंडरी सिंगर ने काफी सालों पहले एक क्वीन के लिए ही ये गाना गाया था कि मेरा कुछ सामान तुम्हारे पास पड़ा हुआ है, तो जब आप आओ तो लगेज में जगह हो तो थोड़ा सा ले आना थोड़ा सा। हम बाद में डिसाइड कर लेंगे उसको कि इंडिया के पास चाहिए जाएगा कि पाकिस्तान के पास जाएगा। अच्छा, ईरान हैज रिसेंटली कम अप विद द कंटेंडरशिप, वो बोल रहा है हमारा है कोहिनूर, तो हम उस पर डिसाइड बाद में कर लेंगे, लेकिन आप एक बार लाओ तो सही।
नहीं भाई, इस पे और झगड़ा नहीं, we want peace now, but I didn't
we
go.
also want peace only.
One piece. एक piece. I'm not asking for much.
हम करेंगे क्या हमें नहीं पता है. Like people have asked me what would you do? आधे पता नहीं. ऐसे अच्छा लग रहा है. ऐसे there's a dialogue ना, ऐसे सेक्सी लगा था. बस सेक्सी लग रहा है तो ले आना है, बस और कुछ नहीं करना है.
Okay, I request मैंने लिख लिया. क्या करें? I'll try my best.
खैर, अब आते हैं खाने के ऊपर. So you mentioned that you didn't know how to boil an egg when you were 18. मतलब 18 साल तक आपको अंडा बॉईल नहीं करना था. And now you are in the food space. So what is the first major dish that you cooked? उसके बाद and how did you get into it? जब अंडा, मतलब it's like I tell people that मुझे मैगी बनाना नहीं आती है, मुझे जनरली नहीं आती है. लोग बोलते हैं तुमको पानी बॉईल करना नहीं आता है, but I'm like यार मैगी बनाना आर्ट होता है. But
that is also true. And Maggie, Maggie is a universal language of love. My children love Maggie. In central London, we buy Masala Maggie. And I have to ration, in 1 month. No, so kya hua ki I was growing up in Calcutta and my mother obviously loved cooking but didn't cook. She used to just tell the cooks what to do. And I was kept out of the kitchen. Every time I went, they said, ki chai, ekane ki chai. Kane jao. It was like Victorian parenting, like get out, go stand over there, don't come where the grown-ups are. So then when it was time for me to come to England, my mother taught me egg chicken curry. So the one chicken curry that your family makes, murgi jhol. So one murgi jhol was taught and one dal was taught with masoor dal was given to me and I was shown how to make that. And then I was sent to London and I went to university in a place called Buckingham. So I arrived, I put tin of baked beans in the microwave. I won't do that again. That did not go so well for me. Then Uncle Ben's, you can buy a packet of rice. Ek packet mein aati hai, to so I put the packet in some water and started boiling it. And then my flatmate came out and said, I'm like, I don't know why the rice isn't boiling. She's like, you have to open the packet and take the rice out of the packet first. And then, at university here, I was just eating petrol station pasties, Tesco mein na milti hai yahan pe supermarket mein, buy 3 for £5. Okay. Chicken korma, balti, balti like bucket food.
Correct.
We can talk about that later also. So all this I used to buy 3 for £5 used to get. And then microwave mein dal ke I managed. Then I started getting really interested in it because I met this Gora that I fell in love with. Again, another story for another time. Yeah, if you come to London to milke, I'll tell you my full life story. But I then started teaching myself how to cook because if the Gora doesn't cook Indian food and if I don't cook Indian food, then how will I get ghar ka khana?
Correct.
Khatam kahani. So I bought a big bottle of Smirnoff vodka Then I got some of those international call cards. And I used to call my mom, I used to call my nani. My dad is a very big cook. He was the chef in the house. So phone call, maar ke, ye side, ye take two diye de be, take two. Ye dal de na, re, bhaja mosla janish na. You know, jhadu vadu milke. And of course, in our families, nobody has a recipe. You add some this, some that. And my mother says usual masalas. Now add usual masalas. What are usual masalas, yeah?
Correct.
So in Delhi, usual masala is basically the tadka of the phoron of cumin seeds, then coriander powder, turmeric chili. So she has a standard usual masala and everything involves usual masala.
Okay. Oh.
And that's how I learned.
That's very interesting. I'm at a B school where there are people from 64 different countries and there's a WhatsApp group for recipe exchanging. Now, that's very hard for us Indians because we don't have exact recipes. We keep tasting and swad anusar hum namak dal dete hain. We add more mirchi, more garam masala. So it's very hard to send exact recipes to people.
And it's very much the diaspora experience, Archit, for Indians and South Asians generally. When we come here, it's like if you're trying to recreate those meals, then you go on taste. You go on taste, you go on texture, you go on smell. Does it smell okay?
Yeah.
But like, I'm glad you're not Parsi because Parsiyon ko to anda chahiye hi chahiye. But then do you call yourself as like, I can now boil eggs properly? Can you make demel? What's the demel thing?
Demer dalna.
Demer dalna.
Egg
Can you
curry. Very good. I'm impressed that you know the fundamental of egg curry in Bengal. Of course. I cook damn good eggs, man. What are you saying?
I'm just checking.
Cookbook likh liya.
I'm just checking.
Maybe not Master Chef level, huh?
Yes, Master Chef level. I always tell people, if you know how to boil egg, you can go there. One of my really good friend now, he got eliminated because he couldn't boil eggs.
You're joking.
Legit.
From the first round?
No. He was eliminated before me. So basically, we three were friends, okay, on the MasterChef show. So first he left, then I, and then another friend. So all three of us, like 3 wickets, we just all fell one after other. I think हम तीनों बोले क्या हमारा दोस्त चला गया अब हम भी क्या करेंगे रह के. We all left. But the first guy, he runs his restaurant now in Jammu. I have doubts now on him कि गधे को से एक अंडा तो boil हो नहीं रहा था. How is he running a restaurant?
ये गधा सुन रहा है क्या आपका पॉडकास्ट?
सुनना चाहिए उसको. He was my also roommate.
वो तो सूज से कराता होगा.
हाँ, सूज से. हाँ, exactly. मैं उसको आज भी ये बोलता हूँ कि तुमसे तो अंडा boil होता नहीं है. No, but also because the kind of egg he was trying to boil was soft eggs, and that's legit difficult to soft shell is legit difficult, hard to boil.
Very soft shell is hard to boil. And also, what about poached eggs? Poached eggs master kiya?
हाँ, वो मैंने master किया. मैंने master कर लिया, but I don't like it, so I don't cook it.
Oh, really?
I don't like runny yolks.
I'm shocked and appalled, and I can't speak.
I love runny yolks.
I am shocked.
Yeah.
I
can add runny yolks on everything, like literally any dish.
I just can't stand anything which is slimy. I also don't like the curds. That's exactly why I don't like curds. Apart from, actually, no.
No, it's a blanket ban. Achha, it's the texture, is it? Poached egg texture. I've not heard that before.
Yeah,
so the texture is too slimy for you.
Yeah, the yolk.
He doesn't like the yolk flowing.
What bakwas, man.
Like I can cook really great eggs benny, but I can't eat it. I remember there's one restaurant I walked into, and then I was like, Turkish eggs, right? Turkish egg and then sourdough bread. So this guy was like, sir, तो मैंने उसको बोला कि ये काम करना ना, eggs poached egg होता है Turkish egg में ना. I said, make sure it's fully properly cooked. So he said कि no sir, but इसमें Turkish egg taste good with the poached egg. मैंने बोला पता है मेरे को, लेकिन I don't like it. So give me.
You're not into it.
No, I'm not. So I'm like,
तो egg curry खा लो.
हाँ, वैसे ही चाहिए था.
Oh, I have a question for you. Is it the fundamental of cooking? What does it start with? Does it start with boiling an egg? For us in Indian cooking, what is the first thing you need to master?
Roti.
No, man. What are you saying?
Roti is the first thing you need to master. See, because...
I think khichdi.
Khichdi is, I think, it's also second level. The reason I'm saying is why you need to master roti for 2 reasons. You're not learning... The step 1 is never baking. Like, you're not learning how to bake cake. Right? So to master roti, because sabzi, cooking is the science behind cooking is that अमूमन नमक मिर्ची का ही खेल है, वो तो टेस्ट करके हो जाएगा. But for some odd reason, we as in maybe the whole of diaspora, we love roti to be round. Now, mastering that is a difficult task. And how you go to knead the entire dough. So first you need to knead a softer dough. Then you need to make sure that the roti are round. And then within that, the third pro level is the third pro level of roti, that when you're rolling the roti, it has to phulna is the fourth. When you're rolling the roti, it has to घूमो on its own. हाथ लगा के आप ना घुमाओ, वो आटे से ही वो अपने आप घूमे. So that's the third level. And then comes
aesthetically, that's the image of somebody cooking Indian food in a movie or in a TV show. They show you beloing roti
अपने आप घूमती रहती
है, the roti rice. Yeah.
तो सब्जी तो बन जाता है, सब्जी बनाने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. But I think
what is your answer, Mallika?
What is yours?
So firstly, I'm going to say that rotis always taste better when someone else makes them.
Correct.
The love, the enjoyment of a roti goes when you have to make it yourself. Phulke hai to koi dusra koi paka ke he brings to your table, ghee laga ke. That is a proper roti experience.
Correct.
I think actually the starting point is a good curry of some sort. Because when you make a murgi or a mangsho or something, you can see the transformative process one by one by one. So yahan kya karte hain na, the people who don't understand Indian cooking, sab dal dete hain. Before the onion is cooked, you've moved on to something else. Before your spices, the process that you go through, seeing, in the oil you put the whole spices, they sizzle. That step-by-step process is very instructive for the way we work with spices, with ingredients, with smell, with taste. And that process has to become intuitive to be a good cook, I think. A good Indian cook.
Okay. I think Indian cooking is all about intuition. It's interesting what you mentioned, because I have this cookbook, which is Lucknow cookbook. It's not called Lucknow cookbook, but it's a cookbook from Lucknow, written by Mir Jafar, one of the Nawabs. And he talks about his family. And in that, he mentions that how his family hired this one Khansama, a bawarchi, right? And the only thing, and in the interview, the only thing he could make is korma. So the guys were like, the korma? It's like, sir, korma agar aap अच्छे से बनाओ ना, तो हर एक दिन एक नए तरीके का korma आपको मिल सकता है. And that's what I think is really about mastering an art. And I think, Abhi, when I take my food works, right, I always tell people that the reason why people tend to enjoy the good old street food, because they've just mastered only one thing, and that's about it, right? So what in economics about the specialization, that you're specialized in one skill, so you have to be better at that.
That book sounds fascinating. So I want to get hold of it. Yeah.
I will send you. It's also available online. I mean, the Kindle version is there. I'll take a picture and send it to you.
Achha, lovely. Yeah. And he's right. When I was living in Delhi in Haus Khas, I had this Nepali, Dada, who did everything, basically. Dada drove the car. Dada cooked the food. Dada told me off when I came home too late. And basically, I realized every day he said, what do you want to eat? And I used to say chicken curry quite a lot. Then I realized, Ito murg masala. There's one recipe. And this recipe, one day he puts dahi, one day he puts cream, one day he puts a little kaju paste. It's basically the same goddamn base recipe that he's twisting and turning for me. I was like, Ullu bana rahe yaar. Bahadur Da he was called. I was like, Bahadur Da, ita to same chicken curry to tumi bade And he, and then I cottoned on and I put a recipe for that in my cookbook because I thought it's so damn clever.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, one day you put 1, 2, 3, and then the third day you mix all the 3 masala together.
Yes, एक दिन tomato puree डाल दो, एक दिन tomato full ready tomato डाल दो, एक दिन tomato डालो ही नहीं भाई, दही में ही बना दो. बस same base recipe.
Correct. I think that's what the Indian food is all about, and what Archit you also mentioning, right? It is so difficult to pinpoint saying ये ही डालना है. Because अक्सर जब हम, and I always tell कि हम जब घर पे होते हैं हर दिन मास्टर शेफ चलता है. Because you open a fridge and say अच्छा आज ये बनेगा. And then you go to spice से आज जीरा नहीं आज धनिया जार डालेंगे. So then you get new flavor in the food. So देखो मास्टर शेफ सब मोह माया है. हम सब मास्टर शेफ हैं. Just saying.
Archit, what are you cooking anyway in Madrid? Tell us more. I want to hear.
I've not been cooking much Indian, but I find a lot of good meats here, which you don't find in India. So good quality pork, good quality meats that you should name. And I mean, chicken to milta hai India mein. And then I usually saute some vegetable in those shan masalas or wo Indian jo masalas milte hain at stores. So that's I get that Indian flavor usse, and then usually have that with the meat and some rice.
वो
So that's
इंडियन
what I've been
मसाले
cooking.
वो वाले इंडियन मसाले जो पाकिस्तान से आते हैं शान मसाले
वो वाले Indian masala jo Pakistan se aate hain.
Yeah.
The best known Indian store here, I mean, that's what people call it, Indian store, is run by a Pakistani, which is, as you know, Mallika, fairly common outside India.
Totally.
Yeah,
And by the way,
and-
those shan masalas are very popular, overseas in London,
yeah,
like in the UK generally.
Yeah, that actually takes me to a question that I had. So you've eaten Indian food all over the world, and UK, South Africa, UAE, US, Australia, Canada, these countries have a significant diaspora population and decent Indian eating options. They might even have regional Indian cuisine. There must be a Bengali restaurant, there could be a Punjabi restaurant. But what about the rest of the world? Countries which do not have a lot of Indian immigrants. Do you think they do justice to Indian food? Have you tried good Indian food outside these normal Indian diaspora countries?
I tend not to eat Indian food out a lot, if I'm honest with you. The migration patterns obviously determine, where you get the food for a start. It tends to be quite a homogenized offer that is set for a Western customer. It's not actually
Right.
Indian at all. It is a version of dishes that have been bastardized beyond sometimes recognition that you get in places. And the quality of the food and the standard of the food tends to mirror the communities, because if the communities there, they're catering maybe to some of the people from where we come from. But generally, I try and avoid it, if I'm honest with you. Like, I see them. I always take a photo. I took a photo in Thailand of Indian restaurants. I was in Portugal recently, and there was a Bengal tiger tandoori house. In Sintra, I took a photo of that. But I tend not to eat it because, for me, spending money, like any good Indian auntie, spending money on the food, I could cook better at home. Just it's not worth it for me.
Absolutely.
typical
I've
mother
had only
behavior.
one good Indian meal here, and I realized the trick is to tell the chef or the owner कि भैया Indian style में बनाना. Otherwise, and that too, if they know Indian style and they're from India. If they're not, then tough luck.
That's a top piece of advice, by the way. What I tend to do when I go to Saravana Bhavan here, and they know me quite well now, I say to them, don't give me the old idlis from yesterday. Take out the newly steamed ones. Huh? And now they know. So they see me, they're like, hello.
Fresh
Fresh
wala
idli
aapke
is
liye
coming.
Fresh idli tadka maar ke.
Yeah. Even there's a Pakistani place here called Chaat Khada. By the way, my restaurant selection is all dives, but there are some good, very posh ones also that I go to. But there's a Pakistani dive called Chaat Khada, and the food is very, very good. But the food sits outside all day. So when I go there, I'm like, bhaiya, lamb biryani dena, but andar se laiye, please. Jo fresh bana hai. So that's my tip.
So, because you mentioned biryani, and I am a self-proclaimed unofficial official spokesperson of biryani in Hall of India, famous in Noida.
Wow, bhai, wow. This is a great accolade.
So, what biryani do you prefer usually? And as well as, are there, prefer as in to eat and to cook? And may or not be that these biryanis are available in the market. What is your preferred biryani?
Of course, I have to say Kolkata biryani. What a question.
Of course, with aloo.
Of course, with aloo and haldi.
Sadaf was fishing there.
Exactly.
Totally. And he caught me also. Hook, line and sinker.
Exactly.
I'm so predictable. Every Bengali is so predictable. I
Correct.
can't believe you even tried that.
So, do you get a Bengali biryani in London?
You do get a Kolkata biryani in London. There's a couple of people who do it. It's good. I don't think it's excellent. But then, Kolkata biryani is Kolkata as part of its charm. To extract that is quite difficult. I make Kolkata biryani at home. I also make Hyderabadi biryani, which I love. And I learned to make actually in Hyderabad. The chefs at Falaknuma Palace taught me. So I went there and I learned how to do it. They set it up on the balcony. Have you been to Falaknuma? It's a great hotel. So the balcony, they cleared it off and they taught me how to make Hyderabadi biryani overlooking Hyderabad.
Nice. Wow.
It was one
Is
of the
there a video of
nicest
this on
experiences.
YouTube?
There is, do you know what? There is no video of it, but I do have video footage I've done nothing with. I have a photo of me, and I thought, I'm going to do this properly. So I dressed like a Maharani. I have this big, like, lehenga situation going on, and I'm literally learning how to make Hyderabadi. All a bit over the top, but anyway, it was good fun.
Wonderful.
But I do like Hyderabadi biryani, and that tends to be the pattern of biryani that has been exported. So it tends to be variations of Hyderabadi biryani with a lot of suspect ingredients. Someone puts star anise, somebody does some other crime. But generally it is that. And, we're going to talk about overrated, underrated. So that would be my big point of overrated, to be honest with you, over here. Because the versions leave a lot to be desired for and they're very expensive.
Wow. Okay. So, but what's the biryani you prefer usually making at home?
The biryani I make at home is generally Kolkata biryani. So I got my mom to bring ittar. I have very nice saffron. I've got, all the aromatics, nice ghee.
Wow.
You can buy asli ghee now in London.
Wow.
So in the UK, in fact. So I've got all of that and I do it properly. But I don't make a kachi biryani. I always make a pakki.
I think kachi biryani is also two things. One, of course, the entire science and the trick how to make it. And second, I don't think everybody enjoys kachi biryani. I don't know. Maybe, I enjoy it. I love making it. Thoda effort zyada padta hai, but I love making it. If people want to ever make kachi biryani, I would suggest use anything beyond chicken and fish. Any kind of meat, but chicken and fish. I don't think they go good. Fish biryani, I don't. Fish biryani, I don't like. But red meat or mutton is... Or prawns biryani. Again, fish, seafood biryani, I don't really prefer.
Yeah.
But red meat, mutton is the best when it comes to making kachi biryani. Even the Hyderabadi would also tell you the same thing to make
Agreed. And tell me, but that ramps up the technical levels considerably, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because to time meat with rice is next level, man.
Exactly. Like how...
I'm talking to the professionals here. I'm overwhelmed now, intimidated and overwhelmed.
I have written one book, you have two. So you are the senior person here.
It's quality, not quantity.
Yeah, so Hindi mein bolte na ghat ka pani pina, that you have done. So the other thing is because I said I am certified. I know that you also sort of certified by the UK government in all of India, in all of India, about creating kids menu. Right now, we often call as healthy food is boring, right? Which is changing these days. In the modern time, is changing. But when it comes to the kids' food, I work with restaurants in the kitchen cooking. You have worked with restaurants, right? But we tend to oversee their menu because clientele nahi hai, or for whatever reason. But you say you're an expert. So how do you sort of design a menu for kids? And not, when I say design a menu, not mean ki acha ek kaam karte inko pink pasta de dete hain.
Yeah, and before you answer, I've noticed that often kids' menus are very boring. They have margarita pizzas, very basic red pasta, chicken nuggets often. Kids deserve better, and you've written about this as well.
That's right, yeah. And, I've not designed a kids menu, but it's a subject very close to my heart because when I was a child in India, I never ate. I used to be a very picky eater. So lots of parents complain to me now, ki, my children, ye to khate nahi hai, I cook such nice food. And I'm like, don't worry, just let them starve for a few years. And then look at me. But went on to write 2 cookbooks. So everything will become okay in the end.
Okay.
It's exactly what you said, Archit, is that, we create such boring, bland, unhealthy menus for our children. And children are the future. They are the next generation.
Yeah.
Teaching them early on about eating well, eating healthily, enjoying different flavors, tastes, it's so important. Culturally, if you think about us, we ate what our parents ate, but we ate it with less mirchi, basically, right? Yeah. And there were some ingredients that you could not get Corolla down my throat, Karela, if you tried when I was a child. And I'm sure that's an experience a lot of children will relate to. But that doesn't mean they can't have slightly weaker, slightly less spicy versions of what adults eat. So this idea of creating pink pasta, creating shapes, things in the shape of teddy bears and stars and stripes. You don't need to. You just give them what you eat, give them a version of it, give them a smaller portion of it, and get them involved in the eating and the food journey early on, I think is the way to do it. And if we did that, the other problem with a lot of parents is they don't enjoy food with their children. They give their kids meals at a separate time. I tell parents, I'm like, how would you feel if someone was shoving a metal spoon in your face? Cow. It's not a nice experience. If you sit, you create an experience, you eat well together, you can do so much better.
So how important is it to create that sort of a community or have a conversation with your kid, with the family about the food? Because see, when growing up, we were often told, hey, khane ke tale baat nahi karte hain, right? But why not? I think it is a great, and I have seen in movies that, and of course, our family talked about food all the time. And of course, we have seen the movies that people will talk about, not necessarily about the food, but about each other's life, how was the work, how was school, how was boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. But for you, what you just mentioned, right? How important is it to not only shove the spoon and say, hey, eat, and then get out, but create that sense of pride in what you're eating?
They're hugely important because, eating together is an experience. It's about family life. It's about culture. And my two children, so I was determined that my two will be good eaters and they're going to love it. So my son, Sadaf and Archit will be proud to know that he is a great cook. And wonderful. He's a fierce watcher of MasterChef. Yeah, loves Jamie Oliver, really into it. So when we go to food festivals here, he's sitting in the front row. And then if the demo is crap, I can't get him to move. I'm like, come on, no, we have to go now. Yeah. And of course, it's impossible to extract him from the front row. But he's 11 now. He's been chopping since he was 18 months old. He used to chop with a butter knife.
Wow.
Yeah. Then at the age of 3, I started giving him like a sharper knife, one of my most blunt ones. But at the age of 6, I bought him his own chef knife.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which it was like a design for children. So you put a finger in there that prevents your finger from getting in the way. But he used a sharp, proper knife from when he was 6 years old.
Yeah,
and my daughter is not into savory cooking, but she's a fierce baker. She loves baking. She really enjoys it. She tries lots of different recipes. But we did that by sitting and talking and eating together. And the other thing I never do is I never force feed my children. If they say we're full now, I say, are you sure? Could you eat maybe a little bit more? Maybe have those 2 pieces of pasta, and they're like, fine, and that's going to be enough for me. Yeah. And I'll be like, that's okay. Because actually, I don't know how much hunger there is in their stomach.
Okay.
All I will say is, you're not going to get a snack in like an hour's time. I'm not going to let you eat a snack. So you better fill your tummy right now. Okay. And they know I'm serious. So if they don't want to finish everything on their plate, that's absolutely fine. I finish it or I save it for another meal or something. And so we've created very healthy, positive relations. Table mein baith ke baat karo yaar, talk about the food. They'll say things like, you put too much oregano in this. That day my daughter came into the kitchen and said, oh, wow, Singapore noodles. I was so happy. She's 13 and she knows from the smell that I'm making Singapore rice noodles, How cool is that? So that's encouraging that experience of enjoying food, chatting about food, disliking food is all incredibly important if we want to change habits going forward, but also build great habits for young people.
True.
Yeah.
I feel very grateful. I used to watch Nigella Lawson, Anthony Bourdain as a 12, 13-year-old. And then I used to look at these eclectic recipes and ask my parents to probably get those ingredients. And they let me play around with them, even if it wasn't perfect. And that playing around, iterating, actually helped me understand, respect food a lot more. If my parents would have said, nahi, ye kya ajeeb bana rahe ho tum, ye hum nahi khate ghar pe, then I probably would have stopped learning or wouldn't be doing this podcast today. So I think it's very important for parents to encourage kids to explore, try, and play around with flavors. Even if you're not just cooking, you can play around with what you order. You can order different things at different places. Often, like my brother was the opposite. He used to go to every place and order butter chicken. Even if he used to go to butter chicken or dosa. So once he went to a Chinese restaurant, a very authentic Chinese restaurant, and he said, "Mujhe dosa khana hai." And my Mausaji he really likes my brother, so he's like, dosa khana hai, isko chalo dosa khilate. So he actually ordered a Peking duck, which is essentially a pancake roll of duck, which is very similar to dosa, because he was craving dosa.
Oh, that's really cute. I love that. And you're so right. I mean, your parents sound amazing. 'Cause I can't imagine you were doing any justice to those recipes. Sorry, Archit. But, but it's how you learn, right? And the fact that you're taking an interest is amazing. I have a rule. I never pay for a margarita pizza in a restaurant. I will just not do it. I'm like, that's basically cheese toast. घर पे बना देते हैं,
Exactly.
why? And even with the best quality tomatoes, like maybe the Italians would be very happy for me saying this, but I just don't see how that helps him on his food journey, or as part of an interesting dining experience, like ordering a margarita pizza. So yeah, that's very nice of your uncle, because I would have just said nikal jao yahan se, Chinese restaurant se.
If you have to order margarita alcohol, not pizza.
Agreed, 100%.
Also to Archit, 12-13 साल की उम्र में ना, जब when people watch Nigel Lawson ना, that is not
for multiple reasons.
It is not called passion for food, just saying. हम सबने नाइजल लॉसन को देखा है उस उम्र में जब हम बड़े हो रहे थे.
Behave yourself. I know Nigella. What?
Say hello to her. She's such a fabulous lady.
Are you insane? I'm keeping her well away from the two of you.
No. We are like fans, no. so literally like growing up. So I grew up in Jharkhand, which is very close to, of course, Bengal. तो हमारे घर पे ना एक टीवी था. ऑफ कोर्स सबके घर में एक टीवी होता है. हमारे घर में टीवी था. चैनल वाइज जैसे 2-3 चैनल आते थे. DD1 was the only channel, और then we got DD2 or the Metro. तो उसमें usually we had Sanjeev Kapoor and Tara Dalal. That's it, right? But it was when we go to Nani Ghar, which was in Bihar. तो when we go there, वहाँ पर ऐसे अच्छा वहाँ मसला ये था ना कि लाइट नहीं आती थी, लेकिन टीवी में डिश टीवी था. I couldn't understand because हमारे घर पे in Jharkhand we had light, लेकिन डिश टीवी नहीं था because father was for some reason in the beginning against it or whatever, ठीक है. But नानी घर पे ना बिजली नहीं थी लेकिन डिश टीवी था. तो वहाँ पर we get all these other sort of English channels, right? So we'll also watch all these Dennis the Menace and all those बच्चा वाला show. But the food wise, and I have always been interested in food since I was 8 or 9. So वहाँ जाके would watch Anthony Bourdain and Nigel Lawson. To be very frank, Anthony Bourdain I have watched all this while, but I did not like remember his name as a kid because we're going there for the month. But so that was the only time when we'd watch Nigel Lawson and Anthony Bourdain. YouTube नहीं था उस time पर ना, नहीं तो YouTube पे देख लेता. But yeah. So two people.
These used to come on TLC.
Yeah.
Travel and Living channel.
Two people, both Archit and I are a fan of.
This is like a blast from the past, huh? TLC. I remember DD1 and DD2.
Correct.
That's also, those are terms I haven't remembered, haven't heard of in a long time.
We're from that era. So two people Archit and I love. Absolutely would. Archit ने तो एक को तो tweet भी किया था. There is Nigel Lawson and then there is Padma Lakshmi.
Oh, she's great. I can't imagine why you like her work. Tell me more.
We love the food that they cook, mostly.
No, really. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure the swimwear shots are lovely too.
That is also true, but no. See, human beings need to understand when to reject themselves. इससे पहले कि आपको, so like for example, people go on Tinder and Bumble, right? जब आपको लगे कि ये आपके मैच से ऊपर लेवल का है, आपकी औकात नहीं है, तो खुद को रिजेक्ट कर लीजिए चुपचाप से. नहीं तो ऐसे कोई फायदा नहीं है.
I'm loving the levels of high self-awareness here. Very good.
With Nigella, I really liked her because she was imperfect in the kitchen. Like she used to make mistakes. She used to taste stuff and then, iterate based on what she tasted. And she used to go like, oops, I did this. So that it felt very genuine, very, very approachable, very comfortable to see her. Rather than somebody who's a perfect chef, who's doing everything to the T, to the point. And Nigella was different.
Yeah. That's, I think, with Padma Lakshmi as well. And in fact, one of my absolute favorite is Madhur Jaffrey. And I love her, respect her for all that she has done. And also because not a trained chef. So I think when people are not trained chef, they're not afraid of making mistakes. They're like, ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या ही हो जाएगा. Let's not burn the kitchen. So make mistakes, taste it, try it. And like, अच्छा बन गया तो बहुत अच्छी बात है. खराब बना तो ठीक है, चलो fix कर लेंगे. I think that's the...
Totally. And, how else do you make a connection with home cooks?
Yeah.
And, Madhur Jaffrey, I cooked with Madhur Ji. She came to my house and wonderful. I featured on her British TV comeback. It was called Curry Nation.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
she came to the house and my kids were very small then. They were 18 months and 3 years old. So, they were little. And I was very nervous. I have to chop an onion. There were 9 people in a camera crew in my house. My sister was there. The nanny was there. Then there was my sister's friend. Everyone had been drafted in to look after my children, to make sure they behave. And I was really nervous. Abhi, camera pe, I have to chop an onion. And if you see me chopping an onion, I'll be honest, high levels of self-awareness, you will probably not think I know how to cook because I live in regular fear of chopping my fingernails off. So I'm an awkward knife skills person. Anyway, she said, Mallika, you're a housewife. You chop onions like a housewife. You do what you do.
Correct.
Now, housewife, she meant home cook, right?
Yeah.
And she said, that's what I do. I have not studied how to do chopping properly or chefing things, but we just cook the way we do. And I think what Nigella, what Padma Lakshmi, what Madhur Jaffrey have done is phenomenal because they have inspired a whole new generation of cooks who look at them and say, do you know what? I can do this too.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'd like Padma Lakshmi ji to inspire me with is how to get a body like hers. But that is another topic for another day. And, I live constantly in awe and inspired every day to boost my exercise regime.
She should be your workout partner. Online workout partner.
If she's listening, yes, please.
Yes, please. We will let her know, even though she doesn't know us, but we will make sure she knows us.
I feel slightly scared for her.
No. ऐसा कोई ज़रूरी नहीं है. खैर, on that interesting note of remembering all the favorite ladies of ours, let's take a break. And break के बाद आते ही फिर कुछ और सवाल जवाब होंगे और क्या ही कर सकते हैं हम. Let's take a break.
And we're back. Now, Mallika, you're a food writer and you also teach a course on food writing. Now, to me, food writing beyond just recipes is a very challenging art. Why? Because you will never be able to make the reader taste what you've tasted. And you might have had the best eating experience, but you can only write about it. You can't make the reader taste it on his tongue, on his or her or their tongue. So it's very challenging. How do you overcome this as a food writer, A? And B, which is the biggest mistake amateur food writers make, in your opinion?
Oh, these are great questions. So I do teach food writing. I mostly do it at the British Library. And I've been doing online courses for about 3 years. And I just did my first on-site weekend masterclass. It was 2 days, morning till evening. And, you highlight a really important point, Archit, because I think people think that food writing is just recipe writing. But there's so many different kinds of food writing. So you have food memoirs, you have product copy is actually food writing. So when you write labels, restaurant reviews, of course, lots of people write memoirs. They document their family's legacy by writing about it. Someone on my course was actually a supper clubber. So she's got a day job and she's married to a chef and they run these supper clubs and she wants to know how to write her menus and talk about their ingredients and techniques better. So lots of different segues. My top advice that I always give food writers is think with your taste buds. You have to think about what creates taste and texture and how can people visualize what you're eating. So this visual technique is quite an important one, but you have to always think about how it makes your mouth feel. If you're writing about food. So that's very important. And I hate the word mouth watering, by the way, because that is a physiological function. And if your mouth doesn't water, you should go to a doctor straight away. But the second thing to say to that is the big mistake that people make is procrastination, actually, I would say, food writers. They tend to, you'll see this all the time with a lot of up-and-coming food writers. They will write something, go back, edit it, struggle to get started. You'll see a real mix of techniques, styles. Read everything because food writing inspiration doesn't come from reading about food. It comes from reading generally. So you have to read a lot, read fiction, read non-fiction, read magazines like media, consume the written word generally. And then don't procrastinate, just get going. What's the worst thing that can happen? Kuch bakwas likh liya, yeah. First paragraph, second paragraph, they're always crap. You always change your first paragraph anyway. So just then go back to it and refresh it, revise it, kill your babies. It's a famous saying. Any great phrases you come up with, kill your darlings that you get hung up on, go back and delete them, save them somewhere for later if they don't work, but just get going and read lots. Those are my top tips, I would say.
Lovely. I want to pick on something you said, supper clubs. For our audience in India who I think probably wouldn't know about supper clubs, what are they?
Ooh, okay. Well, there are some people doing very successful and very good supper clubs in India. Don't ask me to name them right now, but I have come across them in my research. Supper clubs are group dining experiences where a food writer or a food lover creates a curated restaurant experience for a mix of people. So you are sharing tables and you're there to share in an experience, to learn something about the food, whether that's spoken or in writing. And it tends to be people who have a deep interest in a subject matter or in a type of food and want to do professional catering, but are not quite ready or willing to take on a full-on formal restaurant yet. So sometimes it stops there with supper clubs. Sometimes those are great exercises or practice runs for food lovers to then go on to becoming restaurateurs. So Azma Khan is probably the best example of that. She used to do her Darjeeling Express supper club, which I used to go to. I really enjoyed it. And then that became a very successful and popular restaurant. So it works both ways. Does that help? Gosh, I've never defined a supper club before.
That was perfect.
Great, excellent, full marks.
Because you mentioned different kinds of writing, right? And as a writer, we all have our own one favorite way of writing. Call it biasness, whatever. Like, for example, I love writing a memoir. A couple of days back, I was speaking to one of the authors and I was saying, how do you come up with so many books? Right? Because that person's book and my writing style are different, because just a recipe book versus finding the memoir. Memoir does take a longer time. You have to think about it. You have to put rosy pictures and all that versus putting on the recipe, which I find relatively easier, not easy, relatively easier. But what is your, especially because the reason of asking you this question as well, because you write books as well as the stories, right? And the other online media. So which one is your preferred way of writing?
So I segued into food writing via journalism, actually. So I don't know if you know, I used to work for the Asian Age in Delhi. And I
Green Park
basically did...
office.
When
बहुत
MJ
stalking
was
कर लिया.
there. MJ was there. So, बहुत stalking कर लिया. Oh my God.
Social research इसको बोलते हैं हम लोग प्यार से.
Bakwas. Google stalker. So essentially my interest, I was interested in journalism and my beat was food. So I went into writing recipes, but I always did a bit of commentary on the restaurant sector here, what was happening with key trends. And now what's happened is I tend to write about food culture and history. So everything related to where we were and what that means for us now. A lot of my writing covers things like culture and diversity, so cultural appropriation, decolonization of the palate, decolonization of food, kids menu, which you've already seen. But it's kind of like things that are happening around us with food and why we need to know about these things. So partition was a really interesting one. I love that. And by the way, I am the worst intellectual on the planet. I let the Bengali community down. I do not count myself as particularly clever or intelligent. Definitely not ready for Oxford University anytime soon. But I think there's something we can explore with like a layman's eye and layman's view. We can explore where we came from, because actually if we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going.
Right.
So I've really enjoyed recently writing about things like the impact of partition on some of the disappearing sweets of East Bengal. The one I wrote about vegetarian Punjabis went down a real treat. And, I hopefully smashed a few stereotypes. That's a big thing for me, just, changing perceptions, views. Indian food, my newsletter is called More Than Curry on Substack, because the word curry in the West is used interchangeably with Indian food. And we all know, that Indian food is not all curry. In fact, there is not even a thing as Indian food. It's a food of India, because it's not a mono, it's not one generic thing. Every part of India, every family has differences and nuances. So I'm really enjoying that. I'm writing something today on essentially racism on Great British Bake Off, because they did a Mexico episode. And so I'm talking a little bit about cultural appropriation and why this just has to stop. because, people have gotten used to Western kind of cultures, majority cultures that were potentially formerly colonial, have gotten used to trampling and running roughshod about the food of nations like ours.
Yeah.
Nations that were previously colonized, they were economically subjugated, they were, used in many different ways. There's this attitude that koi baat nahi yaar, iska khana leke, we can just like trample all over it, turn it into some crap, make a few racist references, ho gaya, khatam kahani. And that is not acceptable. And Archit, to your point, are you colonizing them yet? Well, certainly refusing to be colonized. So, and I think food becomes a really important conduit to talk about some of these things that are really important. We need to talk about what it means for us in today's day and age, about the future of the planet. It's not about the kids' menu. It's about the impact of kids' menus on a sustainable future.
Correct.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. In fact,
I love that.
You mentioned about Indian food not being only about curry. Archit will explain you why our podcast is called Naan Curry.
Hi, what is going on here, boys?
We are going with non-curry, and naan curry is a wordplay on that. It's not very intuitive, I agree, but those who know.
It's
Oh my
non-curry.
goodness, as in naan. It is naan curry. Oh.
Non-curry, yeah.
Like non-curry with a very heavy English accent. It's non-curry.
With a non-curry. So that's why I called mine more than curry, because, it's about, and also me, like I don't just talk about Indian food, now I've gone into all sorts. I'm meddling in everything, basically.
Right.
Jo bhi hai na, the Bengali is getting stuck into, bus, done.
In fact, yesterday only, I was watching this one video on YouTube, and there's this food historian from UK. I don't know where exactly she's from. Maybe you'll know her, called Castor Carr, whatever her name is, however you pronounce her. That came on Modern History TV. In that, she mentioned about the food that was being eaten during the medieval time and the peasant versus the royal food. And then she very wonderfully mentions about curry. And she said there is a mention of curry in the medieval time because for English, curry meant anything cooked. And then I was just trying to associate it that maybe that's what when the English came here, and they're like, anything which is cooked and has gravy became curry. So they also started making me question that, but the curry word comes from Tamil, which is kari, Kari. Then how is that the word already finds its mention in the medieval history? So it's a very interesting place to find research, or in fact ask Dr. Kastakar that what did she mean when she said that medieval UK में तो पहले से curry exist करता था. I don't know.
So that's fascinating, You watch so much TV and read so many books. You don't have any work or what? You need at least 1 or 2 more children. How many kids do you have?
I don't know any.
Yet.
I don't have. I'm not aware of any of them. If they are roaming around, don't come to me.
Time now to claim parental status, guys. This man has too much time on his hands. I'm only joking.
I'm just saying.
Me.
If you are around, if you know me, you know that I am.
Please write to us.
Don't write. Write to us. Don't to me. Not me. Don't write to them.
Right to my team. You make a really important point, and I think on a more serious note, I do think that what then happened is the word curry had meaning and an implication, and it came over here. But what's then happened is it's become interchangeable with Indian cuisine, and unfortunately, what you've also got is you've got Bangladeshi food. There's a food created specifically by Siletes, catering to the Western palate, and a very particular kind of Western palate, which is the chicken tikka, masala, the baltis, all this jalfrezi with a big gravy, pork vindaloo, which is super spicy, like brown and super spicy. So that food it's delicious. It was created for a very specific reason. It has a huge market. And, Bangladeshis, that community has taken a lot. They've really struggled to establish themselves here with that food. They've taken a lot of racism, a lot of abuse from some of the clients. But what then happens is that food is thought to be the same as Indian food. Yeah. So I've written articles that say why your Indian takeaway is not Indian.
Yeah.
And the problem happens is when some of those nuances get lost. So I have nothing against the curry house food or balti, or sometimes I order it. The other day I ordered like a balti masala because they're amazing. And after a long day's hard work, they go down really well. But it irritates me when people think that's what we eat in India. And they ask me things like, how you have great skin, or how do you stay so slim? I'm like, guys, India gave you Miss Universe, Miss World, even now Miss US.
Yeah.
We are the home of Ayurveda, of yoga. Oh, you think people are eating this at home every day? Grease-laden curries. And the hilarious thing is that Pataks, the curry sauce people, they supply all these wholesale curry houses. What happens is they have a huge business in wholesale curries. So essentially what you're eating is Patak's curry sauce with a few extra ingredients sometimes, like in a lot of curry houses, not all of them. And they have the skewered meats and pieces of paneer and vegetables sitting. They just put it. You want phal, you want madras, the curry sauce is there. They just chuck in the veg and give it to you. And that is not Indian food, my friends.
Right.
What is
going
Patak?
grey.
Sorry.
Patak's is a brand, a UK-based brand of ready curry sauces and pastes and pickles. And you can buy them, consumers can buy them in supermarkets, but they have an arm that does wholesale. So they supply a lot of these curry houses. So, some of them are not even cooking. They've got someone Polish in the kitchen who's just using the Patak's curry sauce, tubs of it, to create these Indian takeaways.
So that's fascinating. What's the reason for these curry houses to become so popular versus genuine Indian restaurants?
Have you tasted the food in the curry houses?
No.
My goodness,
No.
it's good, Archit. Next time you come to London. I feel a trip coming on, by the way. I feel a trip to London, a food walking tour of London coming up. It's amazing. It's delicious. It was part of like a cultural thing here, beer and cuz, which is a curry. It really captured the imagination. It's tasty. It's great for mopping up, a few drinks after the pub. And it's got the imagination of people. So the standard Indian restaurant food that you get here is Punjabi food. So it's very much built on the Moti Mahal, that sort of template of Northwest Frontier Punjabi food. But in more recent years, a lot of chefs around the country and also restaurants are doing exciting things with regional cuisine. You get much more variety now, and people are slowly beginning to understand the nuances. And of course, people are getting more health conscious. They're thinking about what they eat. Sadly, a lot of these Bangladeshi restaurants, the curry houses are also dying out because the next generations don't want to take over. So Brick Lane in London is a big example of that, where, there used to be over 100. Now there's some 25 or 26 left. Because, the kids they want professional jobs. They're moving on. They're doing different things with their lives, and they don't want to take on the curry houses. So, there's a real shift in recent years. But if you ever get a chance, you must eat curry house food. It's bloody good.
ऐसा बाहर से अपने मड्रिड स्कूल के आगे से ऑटो लेके निकल जाना कभी 5-10 रुपया एक्स्ट्रा बोलना भैया मीटर से लेके जाइए, लेकिन ऐसे नहीं चलेगा.
लंदन पहुंचा दीजिए.
Come. I'm ready for you. For you. Let's do this.
Let's do it. And this takes us to our final segment, which is underrated, overrated, and favorites. And this is actually my favorite segment because usually the most controversial parts are uttered in this segment. So, what is your most underrated food item, Mallika?
Are we talking Indian or generally?
Generally works.
Anything. So I'm going to do Indian and non-Indian.
Perfect.
I eat pasta a lot, but I'm not a big fan of pasta. I think, and this is sacrilege, and I'm sure I will take much beating for it later. But if there's something to eat apart from a pasta, I will generally pick it.
So you're saying it's overrated?
I'm saying it's overrated. Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? Actually, maybe edit this bit out. But it's just one of those things where I think kale and avocado is basically tasteless. I don't think avocados taste of anything. I think kale is basically a weed. It probably tastes like grass, but luckily for us, I have never tasted grass. I also think turmeric is not a spice. Turmeric is used for very many different things, but as a spice, as a flavoring, it is bitter and astringent. And when turmeric was deemed to be a new discovery in the West, and it was making an appearance here, there, and everywhere, people were using it as a flavoring, and I think that is quite tricky because it's the flavor itself is an interesting one and needs to be combined with a certain set of other ingredients.
Yeah.
And then final bit of overrating would be here in the UK and in London specifically. I don't rate the biryani you get out there. It is quite difficult to find a decent biryani. And the ones at good restaurants, I mean, kidney bech ke kharidna hota hai yaar. 34 pounds for a tiny handi, this much. And forget about that. Biryani to chodo, even kali dal. I remember when I used to go with my now ex-husband, he'd say, I'm like, oh, what's the makhi dal? What's the dal makhani like? And he'd be like, it's £4.50 for this tiny bowl. वो कटोरी होती है ना, silver stainless steel की कटोरी.
Correct.
That much of kali dal for £4.50. And in my house, I make a handi. I make literally my body weight in dal makhani. Because you have to. If you're going to cook something for 4 hours, you have to make a giant pot of it,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what is the cost of a tiny bowl like that? 4p in my house. 40p at best, counting energy costs. So I think those would be my top overrated. Underrated. Okay, underrated now. How long can I talk for, by the way? I have the eternity.
As much as you want.
Yes, excellent. You can't shut me up now. Underrated. I think rice is very underrated generally. Taking on from the biryani point, I think rice. A lot of people in the West especially view rice with a lot of inbuilt intrinsic suspicion. White rice is seen as quite demonic because of its associations with diabetes and things like starch content and carbs content. But the way we eat rice is very different. We also in India have so many varieties of rice. All rice isn't equal. There's, of course, I'm not going to go into the different types, but there's red rice, there's the black rice, there's a whole grain, there's so much. So I do think it's easy to tarnish all rice with one health brush, but that is quite basic, and we should look at that a bit more. Dal, a lot of crimes are committed against dal in the West. I think it's hugely underrated and undervalued. Yahan to, you look at dal, I don't know, it looks like gruel. Tiny portions of dry slop. People don't understand how much flavor you can extract out of lentils. So many different interesting things. In our homes, I don't know if this is for you as well, but in my home, it was like a cardinal sin to mismatch the tadka with the dal.
Yeah.
Every lentil had its own methodology, mechanism. Yeah, to bas dal le lo, red lentil, usme ek tin coconut milk dal do. Ho gayi? Coconut dal. Lentil dal do, celery dal do, commit a few more crimes, and there you have dhal. What is dhal? Yeah, DHAL. I think anyone who wants to cook dal or serve dal should go on a journey of exploring it properly, because there's a phenomenal variety out there to explore.
There was a book written by Salma Hussain as well on dal. So anybody who's interested in going through that journey, घर पे बैठे तो वो Salma आपा किताब पढ़ सकते हैं.
This is very interesting. I haven't seen Salma's book. I've got a couple of them here, but I'm going to look that up because there's a real market for that. Acha, pata hai, in the pandemic, when I wrote my second cookbook, my agent said, now you have to write a cookbook about dal. And I wish I had, guys, because then the pandemic happened. Everyone thought the world was coming to an end. And so what did they do? They all went and bought dry sacks of lentils.
Correct.
They started baking banana bread. They started baking sourdough bread, and then they stockpiled on lentils. Abhi to I would have become a millionaire by now. I missed my boat.
I know. Gone.
Good for Salma, though. I'm pleased to hear that. I'm going to look up her cookbook.
It's an old book. It's an old book. I think it came out in 2017 or 18, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, it's only on
lentils.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to look that up. I'm going to just say that spices are massively undervalued, and I'm not scoring a massive own goal here because I've actually divested from my spice business now because it was all, I do too many things, I needed to rationalize, and I can't, run a business. So it's quite hard for me to invest time in a startup that doesn't pay. But I do think people buy spices, they love the idea of spices. We'll get some baharat, we'll buy some, Lebanese spice mix, we'll get some pul paper. And then it's just sat there festering in your cupboard. Death by cumin seeds. Cumin seeds, if you need for a recipe, check if you have it already before you go and buy another jar, another packet. And if you are buying spices that you don't know, you're not that familiar with, then do your research, work out how to use them, because they sit there and they just basically lose their mojo over time. So I do think buy spices, use spices, and really value the magic they bring to food and ingredients would be my top 3.
Completely agree with spices. I am a spice lover person. I mean, there's still a time that I really want to come up with the spice brand of my own. Because I genuinely, I think it just adds so much of flavor. Like, कुछ भी normal ऐसा बना, पालक साग, थोड़ा सा नमक डाल दिया, थोड़ा सा मसाला डाल दिया, oh, lazeez.
Exactly.
So
and like panch phoron.
Yeah.
Do you cook with panch phoron? Panch phoron is like, it's a 5-spice wonder.
Correct.
It shortcuts in so many different ways. So if you start a spice business, Sadaf, they come and look me up. I'll tell you what not to do.
Correct. Don't say
Sadaf, you should also make a portable spice carrier so that if one is outside India and is craving spicy food, which you don't get a lot in non-Indian restaurants, so you can just,
sprinkle.
put some.
There was this one person I knew, lives in Delhi only, Gurgaon. He, and I have never heard of this, he started something as mithai ka masala. And I'm like,
Mithai ka masala?
And I'm like, Indian mithai mein kya masala hota hai? He didn't tell me, of course. He said, Ilaichi he had. He said कि इलायची डाली है, दालचीनी, which is cinnamon. तो ये दो चीजें उसने बोली. Saffron he didn't mention. Because also the spices was not that expensive. So he didn't. He said, I'll send you the spice mix, but he never did. He said, थोड़ा सा कहीं भी डालो, बहुत मजे आएंगे. So अच्छा. So I'm like, उसके अंदर मसाले के अलावा क्या था, भांग था. I don't know what all he added, but he said mithai masala. So that was an interesting thing. Yeah.
It's a very interesting concept, isn't it? I created a dessert spice mix as well. But, again, mithai masala means if there isn't enough quality grade green cardamom, what joy are you going to get out of it? Right?
Yeah.
Try it and tell me. Keep me posted.
I should sort of touch base with him again.
Yeah.
Cool. दुकान बंद करने का टाइम आ गया, but before we let you go, Mallika, tell us about your food podcast and where we can find it.
That's really lovely. So it is not my own podcast. It is one I am hosting for BBC Good Food, which is run by an organization for BBC, for the BBC brand. And it's a global platform. They are running a podcast series called Cook Smart. And so I'm sure you're hearing that there's a big cost of living crisis here in the UK. And energy prices have gone up because of Brexit. Food prices have gone up. And it is a real pinch, like across the board. Unless you're very wealthy, a lot of people are not only struggling to make ends meet, but they're having to be very conscious about things like food waste, energy usage, making sure that leftovers are used properly, things like freezers are used properly, but also the cost of ingredients. So, if you're spending money on expensive ingredients, you don't want to waste them, right? Yeah. So how you then freeze things. Ye to hum log India mein, we've been doing it for generations.
Correct.
So, this is like, my mother is here now and she's following me around in the kitchen. She has memorized the contents of my fridge and freezer. That day I bought a watermelon. She's saying, hey, Tumi, what are you going to do with the rind? I'm like, Ure Baba. She's like, khosha phel bina. So don't throw the peels. Because the peels, they get shredded and we make khosha bhaja with it. And this is not just a Bengali thing. In India, there are so many examples of nose to tail eating, zero waste ethos, using leftovers, repurposing. So they asked me to present the podcast. And I was really pleased about that because not only as I've always written recipes alongside a corporate career. So I know what it's like being busy, being stressed with time and having to be efficient as part of that. Also, I'm Indian and it runs in my blood, in my veins. But as a busy entrepreneur now, I have to be efficient. I'm having to work harder. Abhi, I know that soaking chickpeas and boiling them for 3 hours is the cheapest way, or putting them in a pressure cooker. But I haven't suddenly miraculously got 48 hours in a day. In fact, I have no time because I'm busy earning money. So some of those tips, tricks, I've got some of my expert friends to come along to the podcast. And thank you. I hope people enjoy it and that it will provide inspiration to lots of different types of people.
Sure. Zero waste or no waste is a thing which is coming back. So I think everybody should and must try reducing as much as possible the waste. And that also include not throwing away the cooked food as well, because we often do that.
It's terrible. Apparently in the UK, people throw away 800 pounds worth of edible food a year.
Wow.
800 pounds. That's crazy. We should not be doing that. Yeah.
Garib log khane
But
lege
this
lege.
was a lot of fun. This was, I think, as we told you during the break, one of our more conversational episodes, and we love that. We love talking, obviously. We have a podcast. So thank you so much, Mallika.
Thank you so much, Mallika.
I did notice that you love talking, but yes, we could have definitely talked for England and India, and we did. Thank you so much for having me.
We should next time call her back and talk about England and only English food.
But no jewels, please. Thank
No
you.
jewels. हो गया.
Yeah, हो गया.
इस
बस
बार
वो
कर
तो
लिया.
खत्म.
अब अगली बार कुछ और की बात करेंगे.
I would love to, and thank you so much for asking me on. I've really enjoyed this. Great fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
On that note, Dukaan band.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network.
You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com.
You can also follow us on our social media. We are @IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I am Hussain Sadaf1, and on Instagram, I am Sadaf_Hussain. You can reach out to Archit
On Twitter, @BandTofu, and on Instagram, @The Hustling Glutton.